And welcome, viewers, to the Daily Space Weather. Smash here, coming at you from the Smash News Network, least busted name of news, as we bring you the most detailed imagery of the sun and most comprehensive space weather in the known universe. So we're looking at the sun here in two wavelengths, 171 plus 193 angstroms, to see a new sunspot rising here in the southeast. A bunch of sunspots setting in the west. A basic reduction in solar activity here. And a late arrival, at least from the perspective of NOAA's coronal hole high-speed stream forecast for the arrival of the coronal hole high-speed stream. We don't see it arriving yet. We'll be keeping an eye on the real-time solar wind. Next, we're going to look at volcanoes. Sakurajima is erupting, producing a 7,000-foot ash plume. Semaru producing a 14,000-foot ash plume. And Kilauea has stopped erupting. The effusive eruption has ended. Popocatépetl exploding, flight level 220. Fuego exploding, flight level 140. Sangay exploding, flight level 190. That's a 19,000-foot ash plume over Ecuador from Sangay. 14,000-foot ash plume over Revenador, over Ecuador from Revenador. And Sabancaya producing continuous emissions in Peru. Please remind your friends and foes to not pole vault the caldera. Next, looking at the 90-day bar graph here for seismic activity. And of course, yesterday it was a big story. A 6.4 occurred off the coast of Ferndale, California, just barely off the coast in some shallow water of the Eastern Pacific. So we're seeing aftershocks there. And we're going to scroll up the list here. No major quakes over the past 24. A few that were in the 5+ magnitude range that we'll mention, like this 5.2 at Antigua, which is actually the largest quake we've seen in the Caribbean in quite a long time there. 5.2 at Antigua came through at 12:28 Universal Time yesterday. So again, lots of aftershocks there near Ferndale. Kermadec Islands had a 5.4. That one came in at 16:38 yesterday. Once again, let's hope that 6.4 wasn't a foreshock, but at the moment, not looking like it. We're just seeing lots of aftershocks there. There was a 5.2 at Tonga also that came in 23:13 yesterday evening. Fiji had a 5.4. That was at 4:34 this morning. The Mid-Indian Ridge had a 5.1 at 5:35 this morning. And that is where we will close things out with our geophysics. That's our earthquake report for the day. Let's move back to space. But first, I would remind our viewers to visit our links. Help out the channel by clicking the links that you'll find in the description below the video. You'll find links to our SureMed link, Hemp Lucid, the Twitter page, Instagram, YouTube, and more. If you're viewing on BitChute, make sure you go subscribe over on YouTube. And by the way, welcome to Neo-Renaissance. We've been trying to tell people the truth about how Earth is croissant-shaped for a long time. Of course, many people believe it's spherical because they just believe NASA's lies. We, of course, know better that the planet is shaped like the French pastry. The Earth is croissant-shaped. You can quote me as saying it. So we take a look at the sun from far and from near. We use all sorts of different instruments to bring you the most detailed space weather. And, of course, imagery of the closest star you'll find anywhere. We look at coronal mass ejections, we look at filaments, we look at sunspots, coronal holes, and lots more on the channel. Here's a great zoom in the wavelength we started things out with, 171 plus 193 angstroms, showing all kinds of great features like coronal holes, bright regions around sunspots, even showing filaments there and prominences. Let's get into some data here. The space weather important, relevant data is coming. The 10.7 centimeter radial flux now at 146 solar flux units. A bit of a decrease there in the radial flux represented by this black line here from Solon.info's great information there. Radial flux is the black line. Sunspot number is the red line below it. You can see the huge variations happening there and the proportionality, perhaps, of the radial flux versus the sunspot number. They are the two most important features in determining solar activity. Of course, There are the radio flux and sunspot number. You can see how proportional those are, indeed, historically speaking. This is the Space Weather Enthusiast dashboard, by the way, if you want to look at it yourself. Again, the coronal hole high-speed stream a little bit late at showing up. So no geomagnetic storms yet, although they are in the forecast. A little bit of a late arrival there, or perhaps a complete miss, but at the moment, no coronal hole high-speed stream evidence showing up. So here's Earth's magnetic moment from space for the past 4 hours. It's our Geospace Magnetosphere movie. We show it daily because the archival data is not accessible that I'm aware of. So at least we show 4 hours per day on the channel. That's what's going on at the moment here. It is a geomagnetically calm condition at Earth's magnetic moment from space. Here's Earth's magnetic moment from the ground. Somewhat geomagnetically calm conditions. This will show you the most likely places to see things like the aurorae. Also induction into power grids, pipelines, rail lines, etc. It's Earth's magnetic moment from the ground. It's scaled in nanotesla by the Space Weather Modeling Framework. If you want to read about it, scroll down to the bottom of the Geospace Magnetosphere Movies page or the Ground Magnetic Perturbations page and click Details. You will see a link to the Space Weather Modeling Framework. You can download the software. The KP index is at 3. That is a measurement of global geomagnetism. The planetary K index currently at 3. Looking at the real-time solar wind, we saw a bit of a strong field, so we got up to a KP3 here for a moment. We had a strong negative BZ signal right here represented by this red line. We saw a BZ of negative 11 and a BT of 13 nanotesla, so a little bit stronger field there and a highly negative vertical component there. That's that red line. But Earth quickly came out of that and went into a positive BZ again. So the current conditions are 375 kilometers per second for the solar wind speed and just over 9 protons per cubic centimeter for the solar wind density. We can expect to see a much larger increase in the solar wind density with the arrival of the next coronal hole high-speed stream. The GOES magnetometers here showing a little bit of spiky readings there. Was the coronal hole high-speed stream just a glancing blow that largely missed Earth, or is it just late in arrival? Let us know in the comments what you think. And let's take a look at the heliospheric current sheet. So here's the heliospheric current sheet. Earth lies in a North Pole-oriented current sheet. Pretty basic there. No apparent changes coming here. We did have a new sunspot form in the Southern Hemisphere. That does have an effect on things. And here's our line of sight field plot showing the sun's B field in blue, north solar polar field in green, south solar polar field in red. Keep in mind that data was 1 hour and 17 minutes old when we streamed the video. That Gong 2 data derived from 51 ground-based magnetometers, as well as magnetometers on stereo A and stereo B. Next is coronal holes. We've got North Pole-oriented coronal holes here dominating the Earth-facing portion of the solar disk. You can see them there in green. And let's move to the 211 angstroms wavelength from SDO to provide some additional data on that. So we've got one South Pole-oriented coronal hole down here. This one right here is south. These are all north. Which brings us to sunspots. So that's the last 24 hours from SDO, the Solar Dynamics Observatory. Some pretty well-defined coronal holes there in the Northern Hemisphere. And here is the sunspot report. First, take a moment to press like and subscribe. Tell your friends and foes about the channel. We don't believe it's being recommended by YouTube. If you're an influencer, drop us a line. We'll be more than happy to appear on your channel. Thanks to everybody who has helped us out over the last pushing 6 years of producing the most detailed space weather in the world. We've also got playlists like Do One Thing, Cosmology segments, smashomash.org presents the sun. There are even music videos on there, so check out our playlists if you haven't. Don't forget to check the 12 Days of Smashmas. We released original music for the first 12 days of Christmas, the first 12 days of December, rather. Below the video, you can also find links to our Hemp Lucid shop, so save some cash by shopping through our link. You can also enter the promo code SMASHOMASH10 on checkout, SMASHOMASH10 on checkout to save some cash on your order. If you click on Shop All, this is the screen that you'll see. Lots of different products there, whether it's for focus, for sleep, or for anti-inflammatory purposes. All kinds of different products available there. We'll have to do more product reviews here after Christmas. The most popular is the water-soluble CBD tincture. So check that out. Also below the video, you'll find links to the Redbubble shop. So if you click that link, you'll find our products in order of best selling, in which there's recently been a shakeup. Do Not Pole Vault the Caldera has upended our previous bestseller, which is kind of surprising. Our previous bestseller contains words that shall not be mentioned because of pathetic, putrid, and disgusting censorship by some of the most evil companies in known human history. Yes, big tech organizations, truly evil organizations, propping up corporatist banana republics, if you know what I mean. Today's featured product is the motto of the Galactic Federation Special Forces, Universum Liberate. Because if we here at SmashOmash.com could wave our magic wands, we'd set everybody free. Yes, in an ideal universe, everybody would indeed be free and not enslaved by evil, tyrannical, plutocratic nonsense. So I say to you, Universum Liberate. And if that frightens your favorite conspiracy theorist and makes them think that you're in the Illuminati, let them think it. Because it's not going to hurt you. What might hurt you is evil. Something that the Special Forces tend to battle against. By the way, the symbolism represents the Milky Way galaxy, signal strength, integrity, and security, instantaneous reach. And that little bright section up there in the upper right, that's classified. Can't tell you what that means, but I would say to each of you, Universum Liberate, the motto of the Galactic Federation Special Forces, and it's time to go to sunspots. So there you go. New sunspot to be named down here. This will be known as 3172. We'll have a reduction in the sunspot number despite that new sunspot getting named today as 3166 and 3163 set on the western limb. Let's move toward taking a look visually at some sunspots. There is your SDO magnetometer. Let's zoom in a little bit, provide a little bit more detail there for you. And it looks like those sunspots have been largely stable. I would note how high of a latitude that new sunspot in your lower left is. This sunspot down here, it's at a very high latitude, meaning it's far from the solar equator. Another indication that solar cycle 25 has a long, long way to go. Over 2 years until we expect solar maximum to arrive. Over 2 years before we expect solar maximum to arrive. And check out the massive number of umbrae here in this group up here. Yowzers, that is a berserk number of umbrae in 3169 and 3171. Once again, mostly stable. A huge number of solar pores there. Next, looking at 335 angstroms, we've added that to add a little bit of liveliness there to show you where the flaring activity is going from. And we'll zoom out here to show you a full disk view before we move to energetic particles and solar flares. Don't get them confused, folks. Don't get coronal mass ejections and solar flares confused. Solar flares are photons in the form of X-rays. Coronal mass ejections are mostly protons in the form of hydrogen nuclei. So no spikes in the proton flux there. It remains mostly flatlined here for a long, long time. We did have one M-class flare in the past 24 hours, but flaring has been diminishing. If you look at the 7-day graph, you can see indeed that there was a huge period of major flaring there between the 15th and 16th of December. Things have simmered down here a bit. And let's take a look at flares from 2 wavelengths. This is 131 angstroms from SDO. By the way, the likelihood of major flares continues to exist as we've got setting groups down here in the southwest. And of course, this group up here, 3169 and 3171, are extremely magnetically complex. So don't be surprised to see major flares here. We've added 94 angstroms to the 131 angstroms wavelength. And here's just 94 angstroms by itself from SDO. And next we'll move on to a star chart. As we're always interested in what's going on overhead, the moon kind of low in the sky right now as we approach new moon. Mars has recently set over Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania, and Cygnus has recently rose. What are you doing with your final hours? Your final hours of the autumn. Or, if you're in the Southern Hemisphere, your final hours of spring. This is the point when the sun is the lowest in the sky. It's coming in only 10 hours and 5 minutes from when we stream the video. As the solstice approaches, it's our countdown timer. Countdown to winter. At which point, it starts to get brighter again, folks. The solstice represents the darkest time of the year and the brightest time of the year, depending on if you're south or north of the equator. So next, looking at our solar system forecast. This is where things are now on Solstice Day. Let's advance this 1 week. Here's where things will be in 3 days. New moon falls on Christmas Eve. And there's where things will be in 1 week. On the 28th, we will have a crescent waxing. And let's take a look at some coronagraphs. There may be another CME with a minor Earth-directed component headed toward Earth at the moment. This is yesterday's imagery, by the way. And early in the day yesterday, a CME did occur. Nope, you know what? I think it's on the western limb in the far side. I changed my mind. I don't think there is an Earth-directed CME here. So that's yesterday's imagery from George Mason University. And here is today's imagery. That's 42 additional frames for you. We don't really see a legit halo there on any of those CMEs. Let's take a look at the perspective of stereo A at Lagrange 5 and the Soho-Lasco C3 at Lagrange 1. Here's stereo A on your left. And if you notice, early yesterday there is a CME right here. It's pretty diffuse, but it is kind of in the Earth line in terms of being north and south. Earth would be off in this line from the perspective of stereo A for you new viewers out there. And if we look at that same perspective here, around that same time there on the Soho-Lasco C3, it looks like all that ejecta is headed off to the west. So keep in mind there is a far side CME happening just before that also. Well, maybe not. All right, anyway, I don't think it's earthly directed, and if it is, it'll be a very minor impact indeed. Let's take a look at some 24-hour videos. Here's a zoom out. That is the last 24 hours. 2 coronagraphs plus SDO 304 angstroms. CME actually propagating right there at the end of the video, also not likely to be earthly directed. Also some indication of some relativistic particles striking the aperture here. You can see this little, there is a little moment there where you see a little bit of interference kicking in. No big deal. That's what's going on from Lagrange point 1 and the SDO's figure 8 orbit over the Pacific Ocean. Anyway, next we got to do filaments, as it is an important feature, and there are some huge filaments right in the Earth-facing zone here. Check out this filament down here. This one needs a name. So once again, I will invite you all to join us on Twitter. Likelihood of coronal mass ejections remains nearly 100%. Expect to see more fireworks in the coming days. So make sure you join us on Twitter if you haven't to name that filament. This one. It needs a name. So let us know on Twitter what you think it ought to be called. As our follower count stagnates and shadow bans continue, people idiotically seem to think that Elon Musk has, quote, fixed free speech and eliminated censorship, something that is utterly untrue, as Elon has admitted himself that he has not removed the deboosting features from the pathetic and disgusting social media platform. Yes, it's better than it was. Is it fixed? Absolutely not. So here's the last couple of hours from the GOES 16 SUVi. Nothing too extreme happening here at the moment, and we will be streaming this live throughout the day in case something does. Here's the last 24 hours from SDO and the house favorite, 171 angstroms wavelength. That ionized iron is great at highlighting the lower corona. Showing magnetic looping. There is actually one interesting filament eruption right up here. We'll let it play through one more time. See a little filament eruption there and a splash back down around the North Polar Crown region. Continuing on to our bonus features, we've got some charging hazards here caused by low-energy electrons building up on the surfaces of satellites, moving into the Central Pacific Ocean, currently over western Mexico and the eastern Pacific. That's from the Satellites Community Dashboard. And let's take a look at the electron flux. Kind of low here. We're expecting it to get even lower if we do indeed see a coronal hole high-speed stream. At the moment, kind of low on the electron flux level. There is the forecast model. NOAA forecasting pretty flat levels here for the coming days. We'll have to see what happens there. There's the one-year chart to put the electron flux in context, that is measured by the GOES 16 and GOES 17 from their geosynchronous orbits using radiography at the F layer of the ionosphere, which is what we'll cover next. It's located at 300 kilometers of altitude, and we've been noting some major abnormalities happening here. Since the South Atlantic anomaly has left the South American continent entirely and is now in the South Pacific somewhere down here, that was unexpected, but facts are facts, so there you have them. So that might not be familiar to you, so let's take a look at the anomalygram. This is showing anomaly in megahertz from a 30-day median. And you will see right here the feature on the ionosphere that used to be over the South American continent, now no longer over the South American continent, around the 30 degrees south longitude line, 30 degrees south latitude line, at about 120 degrees west longitude there. Right there where my pointer is the new location of the South Atlantic anomaly. It has shifted maybe 1,500 miles, and it basically happened spontaneously. I mean, I saw it for a few days before I reported on it, but it's remaining in that spot over the Pacific Ocean. Them are the facts. Did the internal structures that generate Earth's magnetic dynamo change? Let us know in the comments what you think. In any case, there's the latest image. That's 11:45 Universal Time ionogram and 11:45 Universal Time anomalygram. Continuing on to look at the total electron content forecast, because we want to show our viewers where GPS errors are most likely to occur. The total electron content shows the free electrons between your GPS satellite and your handset. There's the still image from Australian Government Bureau of Meteorology. And we are seeing continued anomalies in the electron content. Huge GPS errors expected to continue over North America here. And these could get even more extreme if we do indeed see a coronal hole high-speed wind impact. We'll let it play through a second time to show you the huge anomalies occurring there in the total electron content. So very interesting indeed with what's going on in the ionosphere and with the electron content. Major GPS errors in majorly unexpected locations. Continuing on to our latest intensitygram and latest magnetogram to close out the space weather section before we move to meteorology. And do we have a new sunspot here? Looks like a little pore may be forming there. No sunspot yet. We do have a new group right here. So that group can certainly get a name. It's already got some minor umbrae forming there. It's already beta gamma class. And the new group that'll definitely get a name is this group down here. That is sunspot 3172. And it looks like it is beta class. It's pretty early to really say for sure. Here's the full disk rock back. And, well, let's take a look at this one real quick because it is quite magnetically complex. Mainly North Pole ombre there for sure. So, there are the fields. It's beta gamma class. I'll say it's beta gamma delta class because of these fields right here. Probably the most likely place to see a major flare would be from this group down here. As it sets, it's looking like beta gamma delta class as well. In any case, it's time. Time to do meteorology and chew bubblegum. And we're all out of bubblegum. Before we do that, we would remind our viewers to support the channel. Perhaps open your cobweb-encrusted wallet and send us a few bucks per month. You can do so at smashomash.com/smashteam. If you enjoy the content and you'd prefer to see it continue to exist, remain publicly visible and free for all to view, become a member of the Smash Team at the gold or silver level. We are also still on Patreon. There's all kinds of other ways to support the channel as well. Give Smash staff a raise by helping us out, as we're paid just this side of nothing to put the most comprehensive space weather in the world on YouTube and the most detailed imagery of the sun. You'd think Elon would be watching our videos and promoting us, but for some reason, apparently facts are very controversial. It is 2022 after all. So thanks to everybody who supported us that way, and let's move to the realm of meteorology. So what we're going to do is we're going to show you a feature of nullschool.net that we don't normally do, and we're going to show the temperature forecast here for the U.S. So if you click this button right here, it'll actually show you a forecast. And let's see, that's going to advance. We've got universal time right now. It's 12 noon universal time. As we advance this, there you go. There's an 8-hour increase in the time frame. We're just going to advance this to show the temperature forecast. You can see some very cold temperatures making their way down through Texas, all the way into the Gulf, indeed into Mexico. Some very, very cold temperatures forecasted there for Christmas Eve. And most of the country there experiencing very cold temperatures on Christmas Eve proper. And there's the forecast for Christmas. Again, it's going to be a cold Christmas over most of the U.S. And then things will start to subside there. So let's just switch this back to now. Switch it to winds. Zoom out and show our normal global weather patterns. So there is your surface wind scenario for the eastern world. Here are your jet streams for the eastern world. Jet streams for the western world looking like this. Surface winds for the west looking as so. Don't be an as so. Look at it as so. Here are the surface winds of the central world. And these are the jet streams. The jet stream is the most accurate way to determine global weather patterns. If you had to use only one variable, the jet stream would be a good call. And welcome to Solstice Day. So on Solstice Day, we have the steepest slant that we ever get throughout the year of this line. Whether it's the June solstice or the December solstice, determines how that line is slanted. At the moment, it's slanted to the south. And of course, you can blame Earth's axial tilt and rotation and orbiting of the sun for things like seasons and day-night cycles. If you've got any other explanation for it, please leave a comment, as we've gotten lots of BitChute comments about ridiculous things. Of course, everybody who watches our channel regularly knows the Earth is actually croissant-shaped as the sun rises over the Atlantic Ocean. Summer approaches the Southern Hemisphere. Continuing on to our weather.gov map, if your county's lit, click your county. We've got a lot of cold weather type warnings there. That bright purple, those are hard freeze warnings, are they? Or are they storm warnings? I don't know. But in any case, if your county's lit, click your county on weather.gov. Weather.gov, pretty easy to understand. And those orange areas in Minnesota are indeed blizzard warnings. So here's your forecast for snowfall based on the GFS model for the next 72 hours. And quite a bit of snow there showing up on the forecast. Looks like the heaviest snows are going to be in southern Michigan, actually. Expecting like 20 inches in some areas there in southern Michigan. Again, that's your GFS 72-hour total accumulated snow depth change in inches. Oh, also northern Wisconsin there on the banks of Lake Superior. Going to see some extreme snow there, pushing 2 feet. Let's take a look at the temperature forecast based on the same model. This is your temperature anomaly forecast for the surface in degrees Celsius. GFS model, 72 hours. Temperature anomaly. It's what we're showing. And last but not least, we'll show pressure and precipitation. Yowzers, it's going to be some cold days in the Gulf of Mexico as some hard freeze warnings will cover the Gulf. You can see snow making it all the way down to places like Mississippi and Alabama there. That's your 72-hour GFS pressure and precipitation forecast. Some extreme ice expected to come to Oregon and Washington. Some extended ice there. You can expect to see some significant ice accumulation in those areas where that pink is happening there, especially in western Washington. Yowzers. Some extreme weather coming to large portions of the country. So next we're going to show the snow depth change by looking at the European forecast. We'll zoom in just a little bit here. This is the European forecast for 3 days snow depth. So by Saturday, Christmas Eve, December 24th, that's where we can expect things to be. And it's going to be a white Christmas for large portions of the country. In fact, I would venture to say that most of the country there will have some snow by Christmas Eve. Continuing on to our weather coverage here. This is the NASA GOES lightning mapper, and Florida saw some lightning. Let's see if we have any terrestrial strikes at the moment by looking at our real-time lightning map at lightningmaps.org. At the moment, no terrestrial strikes in the U.S. Continued lightning there in the central Atlantic Ocean. Pretty calm as far as lightning goes at the moment. So we're going to close things out with Doppler radar, shortwave radiation, showing clouds and fog and water vapor. There's your U.S. Doppler. We'll be focusing on the lower 48. Some precipitation happening there in the Carolinas. Also some snow in the central northern portion of the U.S., moving into Minnesota here, making its way toward the Great Lakes. There is clouds and fog. That's 3.9 nanometer infrared radiation. Major low clouds over the Gulf. And here is water vapor. As you see that cold moisture moving its way across Montana there into the Dakotas, Minnesota, and the Great Lakes region. Last but not least, here's your recap. U.S. Doppler radar. It shows vertical motion of water in the air column. Shortwave radiation satellite. It shows infrared radiation emissions to show clouds and fog when it's too dark to use the visible satellite. And here is the water vapor map. That'll clear things up if your Doppler is not giving you the full picture. Thanks for tuning into the Smash News Network, least busted name in news. I've been your host, Dan, a.k.a. Smasher Mash, signing off. And may that solar wind be at your back.